I was the woman in his shadows. The one they called a kept girl. 3 years of quiet dinners, private premieres, and a ring he never gave me. Then came the banquet. The slap. The scandal. And just like that, I was the villain. He didn't defend me. So I didn't call him. I faced the media storm alone, exposed the man who tried to ruin me, and nearly lost everything. This time, I don't sing in anyone's cage. I soar. The invitation had come casually, through a message from his assistant. Mr. Reed would like you to accompany him to Mr. Nolan Chan's engagement banquet. It wasn't a request. Not really. But it was the first message I'd received in 3 months, and even though the tone was as clinical as always, my heart stuttered at the sight of his name. I should have declined. I'd just returned from shooting a grueling historical drama in the mountains. Sunburnt, sleep-deprived, and 3 pounds lighter than healthy. My stylist barely had time to fix my hair before I was shoved into a floor-length emerald gown and pushed into a black car heading to the glittering rooftop venue in downtown Belhaven. I told myself I was just showing up to be polite. That I wouldn't cling. That I wouldn't look for his eyes in a crowded room. But the truth was simpler, more humiliating. I missed him. The moment I walked into the banquet, I remembered why I hated these events. The room glistened with expensive boredom, gold chandeliers, crystal centerpieces, guests whose smiles never reached their eyes. And Asher? He was already there. Surrounded by people. Suit sharp, cufflinks gleaming, posture easy. He looked completely untouched by the chaos he often left behind. When his gaze brushed over me, I felt it like a cold breeze. A subtle nod. Nothing more. I didn't expect him to cross the room and take my hand. But some part of me had hoped for something. A smile. A word. A sign. Said I was a prop. I made my way toward the garden terrace, hoping for air. Champagne in hand, heels quiet on the stone path, I settled on a marble bench beneath the soft glow of string lights. For a moment I could almost believe I was alone. But peace doesn't last long when Chloe Lang is nearby. Ivy Morgan, she called sweetly, her voice dipped in honey and venom. Fancy seeing you here. Alone as usual. I didn't bother turning. And yet she came anyway. With her, of course, was Delilah Chan, heiress of the Chan fortune and the woman every tabloid had once pinned as Asher's future wife. They stood together like twin daggers. One subtle. One savage. Don't be so cold, Chloe said, crossing her arms. This is Nolan's engagement party. Didn't you hear? It's for family. Delilah didn't look at me. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon, disinterested. I thought you dragged me out here to talk, she said flatly. I did. But look, what a coincidence. Chloe smiled at me with practiced sweetness. It's funny, isn't it? How far people will go to pretend they belong. I stood, adjusting my gown with quiet precision. I didn't come here to fight. No, you came here to perform, Chloe said with a laugh. But your act is getting old. Delilah finally looked at me. Are you and Asher planning to get engaged? Her voice was even, but I heard the challenge underneath. I held her gaze. You'd have to ask him. Chloe chimed in before Delilah could respond. That would be lovely. A perfect match. Of course, some people just can't accept when the show's over. They start clinging to the stage like it's still theirs. Delilah said nothing. And Chloe, sensing no resistance, twisted the knife. Some people aren't just embarrassing themselves anymore. Their families are an entire mess. That little construction scandal last year? All those workers losing jobs? Honestly, your father breaking his leg was probably divine intervention. I didn't move. But something inside me did. I placed my drink gently on the bench. And then I turned. She didn't even have time to flinch before my hand struck her across the cheek. Once. Hard. Her head snapped to the side. Then I did it again. Chloe stumbled back, stunned. Are you insane? My voice was cold. Controlled. Insult me all you want. But say one more word about my family and I will end you. Delilah stepped forward, lips tight. Miss Morgan, this is an engagement banquet. Do you understand the consequences of what you just did? I looked at her evenly. If someone mocked your parents to your face, I hope you'd stay just as calm and composed. Chloe launched at me then, claws out, fury breaking through the cracks of her perfect face. She yanked my hair and I shoved back. I didn't see how Delilah got caught in the chaos, but the next thing I knew, the three of us were entangled, Heels scraping, nails digging, shrieks echoing into the garden air. Then someone grabbed my arm and ripped me away. Asher. He looked like a storm barely held back, jaw clenched, eyes flashing. I was breathless, hair tangled, lipstick ruined. Delilah stood a few feet away, shaken but unmarked. Chloe, crying, had a hand pressed to her reddened cheek. And Asher? He didn't speak. Didn't ask if I was okay. Didn't even look me in the eye. He just stood there, that same indifferent mask on his face, like he didn't know what to do with the mess unraveling in front of him. I laughed just once. It came out sharp and bitter. You're taking her side? Still nothing. No denial. No comfort. Only silence. So I reached down and slipped the thin gold ring off my finger. The one I'd worn for years, even though he never wore the matching one I gave him. I threw it at his chest. I'm done. And I turned. Outside, the city lights blurred as I flagged the first taxi I saw. My hands shook as I slammed the door behind me. The driver asked where to. Anywhere, I whispered. Just drive. He didn't ask again. My phone buzzed on my lap. Over and over. Asher. I stared at the screen for a moment, then picked up. His voice hadn't even come through when I cut him off. The house in Belhaven Hills is in my name. You have 1 week to move out. I ended the call and blocked him. On everything. That night I stood barefoot in a hotel bathroom staring at my reflection in the mirror. Hair messy. Face pale. Lip trembling. I'd just thrown away the only man who ever made me feel safe. But tonight he made me feel disposable. And maybe that was always the truth. Maybe I was never the songbird in his heart. Just a cage that sang when he asked. No. Now I was silent. But free. The hotel room was small, barely more than a queen bed and a view of an alley. But after the glittering cruelty of Nolan Chan's engagement banquet, it felt like a sanctuary. I stripped out of the emerald gown and dropped it in a heap on the floor. My feet were raw, heels discarded somewhere in the backseat of the taxi. The silence was deafening. I should have been used to it by now. The world expected me to be calm, pristine, measured. But tonight I wasn't Ivy Morgan, the rising starlet, or Asher Reed's well-mannered shadow. Tonight I was just tired. I curled up on the edge of the bed, still in my slip, and stared out the window, watching the amber lights flicker against the distant skyline. I should have felt proud for standing up to Chloe. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, all I felt was small. It was stupid to let memories in at a time like this. But they came anyway. 3 years ago I was nothing. Not even an actress. Just a girl with a burned-out family, a pile of debt, and a predatory contract I couldn't escape. My father's construction firm had collapsed after a major site accident. He broke his leg in the fall, and every cent we had went toward paying the workers. Lawsuits, late fees, bankruptcy notices, they flooded our lives like roaches in the dark. I tried to help. Tried to earn, to hustle, to scrape something together. Instead I got tricked. A scout approached me outside a student theater performance. He promised industry connections, acting classes, exposure. I was too desperate to see the trap. I signed the contract. What followed wasn't auditions or screen tests, but investor dinners. And drink pouring. And men twice my age sizing me up like I was an expensive wine they wanted to sniff before spilling. I faked illnesses. Dodged calls. Hid behind flimsy excuses. But eventually I ran out of luck. My agent cornered me before one of those dinners. Just smile, keep your head down, and don't ruin the mood. You need their goodwill if you want out. And that night I obeyed. I showed up in a cheap dress and a thin coat, pushed into a private room where cigar smoke lingered like rot. I remember opening the door and seeing 5 or 6 men already seated, graying, laughing, fingers tapping expensive watches. Except one. He sat at the head of the table. Quiet. Leaned back. Not smoking. Not laughing. Asher Reed. He didn't belong there either. He looked up as I entered. Our eyes locked for one long second. Then without a word he stood and left the room. Panic gripped me. I turned and followed, heart racing. Wait, can I go with you? He paused in the corridor, turning slowly. His expression was unreadable. Why me? He asked. I opened my mouth. Then closed it. What could I say? That I didn't want to be groped? That he looked like the only person in that room who wouldn't hurt me? I don't know, I whispered. You just seemed safer. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head and walked away. My agent dragged me back in. The drink started flowing. One of the producers slid his hand up my thigh while pouring brandy down my glass. I shoved him away, knocking the glass to the ground. He slapped me, and I snapped, grabbed the broken glass stem and stabbed it into his leg. There was screaming. Blood. My vision blurred. And then, Asher appeared. He didn't say a word. Just stood in the doorway, calm as a storm before lightning. "You said you wanted to come with me," he said. "So what are you waiting for?" I dropped the glass and ran. He took me to Belhaven Hills. A penthouse with glass walls and floors that didn't creak under pressure. I remember locking myself in the bathroom, scrubbing my skin raw under scalding water. I didn't know if I was more afraid of what had happened, or what was coming next. When I finally stepped out, wrapped in a towel, trembling, he was on the sofa, shirt unbuttoned, talking quietly on the phone. He didn't touch me, didn't leer. He wrapped the towel tighter around my shoulders and said, "Go to sleep. You'll be safe here." And I believed him. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without dreaming of debt collectors or locked doors. After that, things changed. Not overnight, but steadily, deliberately. My toxic contract disappeared. My agent vanished from the industry without a trace. Within 2 weeks, I had a new team, clean, professional, quiet. My career began to stir from the dust. A cameo in a commercial. A supporting role in a historical drama. A small but memorable appearance in a variety show. Each opportunity perfectly measured. Asher never said he was behind it. But I wasn't stupid. He never asked me to pay him back either. The only thing he asked was, no kissing scenes. And I agreed. It wasn't a demand. It was a tether. A soft leash. And I wore it willingly because for the first time I felt safe. And slowly, without permission, without planning, I started to fall. He wasn't warm. He wasn't expressive. But he was steady. He came when I was sick. Sent flowers when I landed a role. Picked me up at midnight when I wrapped a scene on the outskirts of town. He never let me stumble. I told myself it was gratitude. That I was just a kept actress in a glass tower. A pretty face he wanted to shield from the filth of the world. But the way he looked at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't watching, I began to hope. No. All of it was unraveling. I checked my phone the next morning and found it flooded with missed calls. From my manager Harper, from production crews, from mutuals in the industry. Then I opened social media. And I saw it. The clip. Edited perfectly. It showed me slapping Chloe. No context. No sound. No insult. Just violence. Just Ivy Morgan, the ungrateful, gold-digging actress, striking a socialite at a private event like a rabid dog. Comments flooded in like acid rain. Trashy behavior, no matter how pretty you are. She probably thought slapping her would make her trend again. What did she expect, being someone's side piece for 3 years? Actresses like her give us all a bad name. The words blurred together, ugly and personal. One thread had thousands of likes. Everyone knows Ivy's just a stand-in. He never loved her. She was just a placeholder until the real one came back. I scrolled further and my heart dropped. Delilah's face. Chloe's carefully bruised cheek. Tabloids whispering about an engagement Asher never confirmed or denied. Rumors exploding. And Asher? Silent. I threw the phone across the bed and sat down lightheaded. I had given this man everything. My trust. My boundaries. My dreams. I had stayed where he placed me. Smiled when I was tired. Shut my mouth when I wanted to scream. And in return I got silence. No defense. No denial. No loyalty. The truth came at me hard and fast. I wasn't his woman. I was just his well-trained canary. And now that I had dared to make a sound he didn't like, he had let the world rip out my feathers. The silence in the hotel room was louder than any applause I'd ever received. I sat there, eyes glued to the flickering screen of my phone, watching myself slap Chloe Lang over and over. The video had been trimmed with surgical precision. No audio. No insults. Just my hand flying through the air. Cut, rewind, repeat like I was some violent, jealous storm. The comment section was a graveyard of compassion. Who hit someone at a formal banquet? Trashy behavior. Guess she knew she was being replaced. She should have stayed quiet. Canaries finally chirped too loud. I pressed the edge of my phone into my thigh just to feel something real. It wasn't the slap that hurt me, it was how quickly people believed the worst. How the crowd loved to watch the woman fall, especially when she was pretty, especially when they had already decided she was disposable. Harper's name flashed across my screen again. I let it ring 5 times before I finally picked up. Finally. Her voice burst through the receiver, sharp with panic. Ivy, what the hell is going on? That clip is everywhere. I know. Did you hit her? I did. Silence. Then a long sigh. Jesus, Ivy. I don't need the poetic version. Just tell me what happened. So I did. From Chloe's comments to Delilah's thinly veiled digs. I told her everything, how I tried to walk away, how I lost it when Chloe dragged my father's name through the dirt. Harper went quiet again. I get it, she said softly. But none of that's on camera. And the footage makes you look completely unhinged. Chloe planned it, I said. Someone was filming from the hedgeline. It wasn't a phone. It was a small camcorder. Tripod. Professional lens. That wasn't some innocent bystander. Delilah. I don't know. But whoever it was knew what they were doing. The next day the hashtags evolved. Hashtag Ivy Morgan assault. Hashtag Ivy the stand-in. Hashtag banquet brawl. Every time I checked my phone the headlines were sharper. Former model-turned-actress snaps at engagement party. Long time kept, starlet ruins social event. Asher Reed's rumored mistress lashes out. And then it got worse. Vernon Shaw. I hadn't heard his name in years. I assumed he'd been quietly buried by Asher's legal team, or perhaps his own misdeeds had finally caught up to him. But predators rarely disappear. They just lie in wait. The article was posted on a popular gossip blog, dripping with faux concern and unverified sources. Vernon claimed that I'd used seduction tactics to gain roles early in my career, that I'd exploited industry veterans and then weaponized false accusations to ruin their reputations. He never used my name, of course. But he didn't have to. The comment sections filled in the blanks. Sounds a lot like Ivy Morgan. Isn't she the one who stabbed someone in the thigh with a wine glass? Asher Reed must have been her next mark. My hands were shaking. I hadn't told anyone what really happened that night. Not even Harper. And Asher? He had taken care of it all silently. Contracts cancelled, threats vanished, my name kept clean. But now Vernon had decided it was time for a comeback. And I was his leverage. Harper called again. We need to talk damage control. I've said nothing wrong, I replied. That doesn't matter. Public opinion doesn't care about truth. They care about narrative. And right now, Chloe has hers and Vernon just lit a match under it. I leaned back against the headboard. What are you saying? I'm saying, Harper hesitated. Call Asher. He can end this with one phone call. The very idea made my stomach twist. I could still hear my voice from 2 nights ago, bitter and sharp. The house is in my name. You have 1 week to move out. I can't, I whispered. Ivy. He's getting engaged, Harper. Silence. I didn't elaborate. I didn't need to. The photos, the timing, the silence, it all screamed louder than he ever had. I left, I said quietly. And he didn't come after me. That night I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at the window of my hotel room with my knees pulled to my chest and my laptop open on the floor beside me. I watched the footage again. And again. And again. Each time I waited for someone, anyone, to post the full version. But no one did. The edited clip was the truth people wanted. Ivy Morgan. Unstable, vindictive, violent. Just another pretty face brought down by ego. I opened a blank document and stared at the cursor. If I didn't speak now, someone else would speak for me. So I began to type. Hi everyone. This is Ivy Morgan. I'm sorry for taking up public attention due to personal matters, but since things have escalated, I'd like to tell my side. First, the night of the banquet, I did slap Chloe Lang. Twice. And I regret losing my temper. But what that video doesn't show are the things said before it. The mockery, the personal attacks, and a direct insult aimed at my father, a man who has never hurt anyone. Second, I'd like to address the recent rumors surrounding Vernon Shaw. When I entered the industry, I was young and desperate. I signed a contract that forced me into rooms I should never have entered. Vernon Shaw tried to take advantage of me. I defended myself. And I was prepared to face the consequences of that moment. I didn't speak out then because I was afraid. But fear has no place in my life anymore. I've never traded favors. I've never seduced anyone. And I've never been anyone's stand-in. If you want to hate me, that's your right. But leave my family out of it. They don't deserve to be dragged through this. I will not be making further statements. I won't keep defending myself against shadows. Thank you to those who've believed in me. I read it twice. Once through a lens of anger. Then again through the fog of shame. Then I hit publish. I closed the laptop. And turned off my phone. The morning light slipped through the thin curtains like a quiet apology. But it wasn't enough to soothe the ache in my chest. I didn't expect applause. I didn't expect support. But I had finally said the one thing I never dared to say before. No more. No more hiding. No more silence. If the world wanted to tear me down, fine. Let them. But I'd go down standing tall. The afternoon, Harper called me again. I ignored it. She called a second time. I picked up. I'm sending you something, she said. Check trend line. I opened the app and froze. Hashtag Asherid defends Ivy. His account, verified under Reed Holdings, had posted under my statement. So you have time to post this little speech but still keep me blocked? Really impressive, Quinn. The comments beneath were spiraling. Wait, what? Did Asher just go public? He called her by her last name. That's love in billionaire language. I scrolled further. More comments. More replies. Asher had been personally replying to trolls. She's just a flirt. You're just jealous. She seduced her way up. With that face she wouldn't even need to. But she didn't. I was there. And then, did she really slap Ava? Yes. I told her to. Got a problem. I sat there dumbstruck. Harper messaged again. He's been online for an hour. Clapping back. One troll at a time. I've never seen anything like it. If he proposes now, I will cry actual tears. A new notification popped up. At Asherid replied to your post. Open the door. I stared. Then slowly walked to the apartment's peephole. He was there. Asher. In a navy coat, tie loosened, hair wind-tousled and eyes burning straight through the door. He looked like every regret I'd ever had, and the only person who had ever truly come for me. I opened it. He didn't say a word. Just reached up and wiped the tear that had already escaped down my cheek. Then, softly, like it wasn't laced with fire, he said, I haven't even said anything yet and you're already crying. What? Trying to guilt-trip me now? You've really mastered emotional manipulation, haven't you? My lip trembled. What are you doing here? He walked in, shrugged off his coat and rolled up his sleeves. Let's talk about how I supposedly took sides. I narrowed my eyes. You did. He laughed once, low and sharp. Ivy, when have I ever not taken your side? And suddenly I didn't know what to say. Because beneath the rage, the sarcasm, the bruised ego, I saw it. His eyes. Still burning. Still mine. I never took her side, Asher said again, jaw tight, voice low. He sat across from me on the hotel room couch, his posture relaxed, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. There was something different about him now. Less the impenetrable tycoon everyone saw, and more the man I used to find sleeping in my kitchen at 2 a.m., eating cereal shirtless and stealing my almond milk. I stared at him, arms folded. You stood there and said nothing. You were in the middle of a three-way catfight in a public garden, he snapped. What did you want me to do, clap? You didn't even look at me. He let out a cold laugh and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You want to talk about looking? Do you know what I saw when I got there? You tangled in Ava Morgan's extensions, one dress strap off your shoulder, your heel broken, and a fountain jet shooting straight into your back like some deranged Shakespearean scene. I pulled you out before you got clawed to death. My cheeks burned. You still didn't defend me. I defended your face, he said flatly. Because if she'd scratched it, you would have cried for 3 days straight about how your next headshot would need Photoshop. I blinked. Wait, that's why you pulled me out? His voice dropped. I've seen you spiral over a single pimple, Ivy. If someone touched your face, I'd have to call in a therapist and a crisis team. I sputtered a laugh, then tried to suppress it. I hated that he could still do that, disarm me with a sentence. But I wasn't done. Then why didn't you say that? I whispered. That night. Why not just tell me? He leaned back and stared at the ceiling, jaw clenched. Because you'd already thrown your damn ring at me. And you didn't chase after me. He shot me a look. You run like hell when you're storming off. But when it's coming to see me, you act like your legs don't work. I blinked again. He tilted his head. Tell me I'm wrong. I didn't. Because he wasn't. There was silence between us then. The kind that stretches like wire between two hearts ready to snap. Finally, I asked the question that had been buried so deep I could barely breathe around it. Are you getting engaged to her? His eyes flared. Who told you that? I swallowed. Everyone. The whole internet. Delilah said. Delilah said what? He growled. That I was what? Giving her a ring? Trading marriage for her father's deal. I didn't answer. He stood suddenly, pacing like a storm about to break. Then he turned to me and said something I wasn't ready for. You really think the suits I bought you, the contracts I handed over, the work I arranged, you think all that was to keep you caged like a damn canary? My chest tightened. What else was I supposed to think, Asher? You kept me hidden. You didn't let me take romantic roles. You told me not to kiss anyone on screen. I told you that because I didn't want your first kiss on film to be fake. I froze. What? He stared at me. That was going to be my kiss. I didn't want the world to see it before I even got the chance. My mouth parted slightly. That was my first kiss 3 years ago. His expression twisted. I know. Silence again. You wanted drama? I gave it to you. I lit the whole damn internet on fire. He stood, walked over and stopped inches from me. But none of that matters if you don't believe me. I swallowed hard. I don't want a sponsor, I whispered. I want a partner. And what do you think I've been? My voice cracked. You've always kept me hidden. Because you asked me to. Then why didn't you wear the ring? He blinked. I'd worn mine constantly. He never wore his. You never even tried, I said. Asher didn't speak. Then slowly he reached into his jacket. From the left breast pocket he pulled out the ring. I gasped. I never wore it, he said, because you didn't want to go public. This ring isn't subtle, Ivy. People would have seen. Questions would have come. You weren't ready. He stepped forward and held it between us. But I've carried it every single day. In every meeting. Every trip. It's always been right here. Tears welled again. My voice trembled. Then why bring me to that banquet? To test you. What? I wanted to see how you'd react. To see if you'd finally stop treating this like it was temporary. He looked straight into my soul. I've been waiting, Ivy. You just never asked. My throat closed. So if I ask now? He didn't let me finish. He reached out, took my hand and slid the ring onto my finger. I'll marry you tomorrow. For a moment the world stopped spinning. His eyes found mine in the quiet, darkened hallway, stormy, unreadable but burning. Ivy, he whispered, voice rough like he'd been holding back a hurricane. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I stepped forward. One breath. Two. Then his hands were on my waist, pulling me in like gravity had finally won. His lips brushed mine, a whisper at first. Testing, trembling, reverent. Then, fire. He kissed me like he'd spent years waiting for permission. Like he needed to memorize the shape of my mouth, the taste of my skin, the sound I made when his thumb traced my jaw. I clutched his shirt, dragging him closer, and he groaned, deep, desperate, as his fingers tangled in my hair. His lips moved with fierce precision, slow, then hungry, then impossibly gentle again. I broke away for air. Still think you can stay away from me? I breathed. He kissed me again before I could finish the smirk. No. Not even if I tried. The next morning, sunlight bled through the curtains, warm and indifferent to the war we'd just come through. I lay awake beside him, wrapped in the quiet rhythm of Asher's breathing, my ring, our ring, pressed against his chest as if to make sure it was still real. It was. After 3 years of silences, retreats, and unspoken boundaries, he was finally mine. And I was finally free? No, not free. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, interrupting the stillness. Asher grunted and rolled away, arms slung over his eyes. I reached for the phone. Harper. Hey babe. I don't know what kind of fairy dust you sprinkled on the internet, but it worked. Call me. I blinked. Then pulled up the trending page. I nearly dropped the phone. Hashtag Ivy and Asher. Hashtag apology to Ivy. Hashtag stand by her. Hashtag Asher did that. Every trending topic was a shrine to our very public, very dramatic redemption arc. Fan edits. Memes. Tweets from brands saying we support Ivy Morgan. A cafe chain offering a free coffee if you brought in a photo of you crying over Asher's clapbacks. Harper wasn't exaggerating. The internet had done a full 180. And the comment section? It was a digital love letter. Protect this couple at all costs. Ivy Morgan really went from scandal to soft wife era in 24 hours. Never thought I'd stan a billionaire, but Asher Reed had me clapping at 2 a.m. Even the haters had retreated, quiet in the face of his unapologetic defense. It was surreal. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like I was drowning online. I felt like I was rising. By noon, Harper confirmed what I already suspected. We're back on Sweetheart. The variety show that dropped you? They just sent flowers and asked if you'd still join. Did you say yes? I said you'd think about it after you're done basking in your main character moment. I laughed. Then froze. Because it wasn't just the show. Endorsement offers flooded in. Campaign requests. Scripts. Makeup collaborations. The agencies that once ignored me now couldn't send emails fast enough. And it had nothing to do with Asher's power. It had everything to do with the fact that I stood up, told the truth, and stayed standing. Even if I'd nearly broken in the process. Later that afternoon we stepped out of the hotel together. Hand in hand. No disguise. No tinted SUV. No calculated PR strategy. The paparazzi were already there, of course, their lenses trained on us like snipers. But Asher didn't blink. He opened the car door for me like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. And for the first time I let myself be seen with him. Not as his canary. But as his equal. We drove back to Belhaven Hills and I was smiling for the first time in days. Until I opened the front door. The house was empty. Not quiet. Not cold. Empty. His suits were gone. His watches. His cologne. Even the ridiculous little espresso machine he loved, the one I always forgot how to use. It was missing from the counter. I turned, startled. Did we get robbed? Asher just leaned against the wall, arms crossed. I moved out. I blinked. What? He raised an eyebrow. Didn't you say I had a week to vacate? I took it seriously. I stared at him. You moved everything? He shrugged. Wasn't going to wait around to be thrown out. Are you serious? Deadly. My jaw dropped. What if I didn't ask you to come back? Then I'd have stayed out. Simple as that. I exhaled sharply. You really are impossible. He stepped forward slowly, eyes softening. You asked me to leave. I left. But the door's still yours. You want me back, you ask. It wasn't arrogant. It was honest. So I reached for the lapel of his jacket and pulled him down for a kiss. I want you back. He didn't say anything. But he didn't need to. Because the next morning his espresso machine was back in the kitchen. And his toothbrush reappeared beside mine. And I spent the entire afternoon reorganizing his ties by color like some ridiculous housewife in a drama I would have once mocked. But it wasn't performative. It was peace. A few days later something unexpected happened. Delilah Chan invited me to dinner. Is that Delilah? The one I'd once considered Asher's white moonlight. His almost wife. The symbol of everything I thought I could never be. I hesitated. But then she added, I'd like to apologize. In person. That made me pause. Asher was wary. You've had trolls stalk you before. Don't go anywhere alone. I'll be fine. If anything happens, he added, pulling out his phone, I'm bringing a lawsuit and a crowbar. I smiled. You're getting soft. No, he said coolly. I'm getting prepared. Delilah picked me up herself, dressed simply in a beige coat, her makeup minimal. Not the glamorized princess of the upper elite, but a woman with tired eyes and something to say. The restaurant was quiet. No photographers. No fans. She raised her glass. Ivy, she said, I owe you an apology. I believed things about you that weren't true. I let other people's words color my view. That caused you harm. I'm sorry. I stared at her, stunned. Not because she said it, but because I believed it. Over the course of the meal we talked, really talked, about everything. Her family. Our shared history with Asher. She confessed that while she and Asher had grown up together, there was never any love between them. Not the kind that mattered. Our parents wanted it, she said. But I never did. I'm not the marrying kind. Not like this, not for business. She told me that Chloe had manipulated her with old gossip. Showed her edited clips. Slanted everything to make me look vindictive, possessive, unstable. I believed her, Delilah admitted. Until I visited one of your old sets. She paused. They were still talking about you. Not the scandals. How you stayed late to help the costume girl sew a torn hem. How you brought coffee for the lighting crew. How you never complained even when your scenes got pushed to 2 a.m. She looked me in the eye. That's when I realized the story I'd been told wasn't the truth. The truth was how people looked at you when you weren't looking. That night she offered to drive me home, but we ended up running into Asher and the Ton brothers Nolan and Leo, coming out of a nearby building. It was awkward at first. Nolan gave me a small nod, murmured a polite, "Let's not talk about the banquet," and disappeared quickly. Leo, on the other hand, stared at Delilah like he'd forgotten how to blink. She looked away first. He stepped forward. "I'll take her home." She didn't respond. I offered to call her a car. Leo stepped in. I said I'll take her. I didn't get involved. I grabbed Asher's arm and pulled him away before their weird high-stakes mutual tension consumed us all. On the way home I asked him, "What's going on with those two?" He didn't even look up from my hand. "You're holding me. Why are we talking about someone else?" I smirked. "Do you ever get tired of me?" He pulled up the car's privacy divider and leaned in. His voice dropped to a low growl. "You're the only thing I haven't gotten tired of." That night I cried again. But this time not from pain. From gratitude. From exhaustion. From love. 3 days later, the PR team released a comprehensive breakdown of every accusation Chloe had thrown at me. Receipts. Statements. Time-stamped footage. Voice recordings. It tore through the media like wildfire. And Chloe? She was exposed. Linked to Vernon Shaw. Tied to a string of backroom deals involving young actresses. Text messages surfaced. Vile, incriminating things. She didn't even deny it. Because she couldn't. I watched the internet burn her name while mine rose from the ashes. Not because I played the victim. But because I didn't hide. Later that week, a fan posted an old photo of me during an outdoor shoot 2 years ago. Suspended midair and wires, wearing a flimsy costume in the dead of winter. In the background, Asher. Holding a coat. Watching me. Caption read. "He's been in love with her for years. We just didn't see it." I stared at the image, tears in my eyes, heart full. Maybe I had never been a placeholder. Maybe I had always been the ending. The thing about survival is that once you've done it, people expect you to keep doing it. Even if you're tired. Even if your knees still shake. Even if you're finally happy and just want a minute to breathe. They expect you to keep standing. And this time I would. But I didn't expect the storm to come knocking again. This time not for me. This time it came with a list. It was early morning when Jade Bennett, a former co-star from one of my first web dramas, reached out. Her message was brief. "They found another list. You were on it. Call me." I stared at the text, my stomach sinking. Another list? Back then, in those early years when I was still desperate and hungry, there were rumors. Young actresses passed around like appetizers. Men with money. Contracts inked with more than signatures. No one ever said it directly. But every girl who got a sudden breakout role had a whisper behind her name. She stayed in the room. Had stayed too. But not for favors. I'd stayed because I didn't know how to say no. Because when you're 19, broke, and your father's hospital bills are growing like mold, you convince yourself that a meeting is just a meeting. Until you realize the door's locked. Jade met me at a small cafe downtown. She wore sunglasses, but I knew that expression. Stiff jaw, quick glances over the shoulder, a bruise hidden beneath makeup. I hadn't seen her in nearly 2 years. She slid a thin envelope across the table. No label. No sender. Inside, neatly typed in courier font, was a list of names. 12 women. 7 were actresses. 4 were influencers. 1 was dead. And mine was third. "I got it in the mail 2 days ago," Jade whispered. "No return address. Just this." I looked at her. She looked away. "You were on it, Ivy." And so was I. My throat dried. We both knew what it meant. We'd been selected. Once. Maybe more than once. By who? I asked, barely breathing. Jade looked down at her lap. "There's a man. One of Vernon's backers. He funded several agencies. Modeling companies. Indie studios. Her voice broke. He kept files. Names. Footage. I flinched. Footage. She nodded. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a new storm. It was the one I'd escaped from. Coming back to finish the job. I went straight to Asher. The moment I walked into his office at Reed International, I knew he already knew. He was pacing in front of the window, face tight, phone pressed to his ear. He looked up. Eyes locked with mine. Then, clear my schedule. Now. He crossed the room in 3 strides. You saw it. I nodded. Jade gave it to me. Did you touch the paper? No gloves. It was already opened. He swore under his breath. We've got legal on it. It's not just a list, Ivy. That man, his name is Harrison Locke, he was under surveillance for a while. Then he vanished. Harrison Locke? I echoed, dizzy. He was at that investor party. The first one. When you found me. Asher's jaw tightened. Yes. He was the man who'd tried to corner me in the bathroom. The one I never reported because Vernon told me it would ruin everything. He was the reason I quit modeling and ran into acting like it would save me. And now he'd sent this? What does he want? I whispered. Asher looked at me, eyes sharper than I'd ever seen. To remind you that you survived something he didn't expect you to survive. That night, I sat in the living room with Asher, a fire crackling beside us, the envelope on the coffee table like a ticking bomb. I traced the edge of the paper. What if they release it? They won't. What if they do? I asked again, this time more desperate. He turned to me. Then you tell your story first. I shook my head. I can't keep living in confession mode. Every few weeks it's another public letter, another viral clip. I just want to act. To breathe. He reached over and took my hand. You're not obligated to speak, Ivy. But if you do, you don't have to speak alone. Tears threatened again. I blinked them back. I was so tired of crying. Promise me something, I whispered. Anything. If they come for the others, Jade, the newer girls, the ones who are still too scared to speak, you'll protect them. His grip tightened. I already have. The next day I walked into the studio to film the variety show that once ghosted me. Harper had insisted it was safe. That the producers had issued formal apologies. That everything was above board. But I wasn't walking in the way I once would have. Eyes down, smile plastic, waiting to be told where to sit. I walked in with my head up. And when the host made a snide joke about fiery actresses, I shot him a look that made the audience go silent. I wasn't the girl in the corner anymore. I was the one with receipts. That night I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Isla Romero, the journalist who broke Vernon Shaw's scandal 5 years ago. She answered on the first ring. Ivy Morgan, she said. To what do I owe the honor? I want to talk. Pause. On record. Yes. I heard the flick of a recorder. Then let's begin. The interview dropped a week later. A long-form piece titled, The Girl Who Stayed in the Room. Ivy Morgan Breaks Her Silence. It wasn't a sob story. It wasn't a redemption arc. It was a weapon. Detail by detail, I walked through the parties, the contracts, the nights I cried alone in hotel bathtubs while people called me lucky. And when she asked me if I ever felt like a kept woman, I looked her in the eye and said, I was never kept. I was caged. But I learned how to sing loud enough to shatter the bars. The article went viral. Not because it was scandalous, but because it was real. Because every woman who read it knew someone who had stayed in the room. Some had gotten out. Some hadn't. But now they knew they weren't alone. The following day Harper sent me a clip from a podcast. A young actress, just 20, talking about how she read my story and canceled a meeting with a shady producer. You saved her, Harper said. But I didn't feel like a savior. I just felt, still in love. Still here. Still rising. Later that evening Asher came home early. He didn't say anything. Just walked over, pulled me into his arms and held me there. No ring talk. No scandals. Just us. He whispered, You did more than survive this time, Ivy. I leaned against his chest. I didn't want to. I wanted to run. He kissed the top of my head. But you stayed. Love had always been a currency in my life. Traded for security. Bartered for survival. Given freely and returned in silence. So when Asher stood on the rooftop of Reed Tower one golden evening, holding something small in his hand and looking like he'd wrestled with 1,000 versions of himself to land on just this moment. My first instinct was to run. Not because I didn't love him, but because I did. And I'd never chosen love without losing something. It began that morning. He was oddly quiet at breakfast, reading the same page of the newspaper 3 times. I teased him about finally aging into his billionaire cliché phase. Silent brooding, tea instead of coffee, and morning routines that made CEOs sound like monks. He barely smiled. Something was off. But I didn't press. Not until the text came in. Rooftop. 6 p.m. No questions. Or something nice. AR. I stared at the screen. And felt the knot in my stomach tighten. Harper had the day off. No cameras followed me. Even Jade had gone silent after Isla Romero's article sent shockwaves through the industry. For the first time in weeks it was just me. And a choice I wasn't sure I was ready to make. The elevator to the rooftop was private. Only 2 buttons. Ground and sky. I pressed sky. Of course I did. When the doors opened I stepped into something that looked like a dream, or a confession. String lights flickered along the railing. The entire rooftop was cleared except for 1 white table, 2 chairs, and a line of old photo prints clipped to a floating clothesline, dancing in the wind. It was our story frame by frame. From the investor party where we first met, to the blurry backstage photo of me asleep on his shoulder, to the banquet night frozen in amber light mid-chaos. I turned slowly, and found Asher standing by the edge, staring out at the city skyline like it was just another boardroom to conquer. He turned. He didn't smile. He just looked at me like I was every decision he'd ever gotten right. "You came," he said softly. "You called." He stepped forward. I held my breath. "You always thought I kept you a secret," he said. "But I didn't. I kept you safe. I know that now." He studied me. "I've done a lot of terrible things to get where I am, Ivy. But the only thing I've ever done for someone else was you." I swallowed hard. "So why does it feel like you're about to tell me goodbye?" His jaw twitched. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the ring. The same one he'd carried for years. But this time he dropped to 1 knee. "I told you I'd marry you tomorrow," he said. "But I don't want to wait anymore." Tears stung the backs of my eyes. "Asher, I didn't buy this for a wife. I bought it for you. And I don't care if you wear it in front of cameras or keep it in a drawer. I just need to know, after everything, do you want this?" I stood frozen. Because the question wasn't about the ring. It was about the girl who stayed in the room. The one who'd walked through fire. The one who wasn't just loved, but chose love back. And this time, I did. I knelt with him, took the ring, slipped it onto my finger myself, and whispered, "I do." He let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding, and pulled me into his arms. No applause. No photographers. Just the wind. And a promise. The media found out, of course. A blurry rooftop photo leaked, courtesy of a very nosy drone. Within hours headlines screamed. Ivy Morgan engaged to Asher Reed after industry redemption arc. From scandal to skyline proposal. A love letter and lights. The billionaire, the actress, and the ring he carried for 3 years. But this time I didn't flinch. I let them talk. Because I had nothing to prove anymore. 2 days later I was offered the lead role in Lighthouse. A dark indie film about a girl who escapes a cult disguised as a wellness retreat. It was haunting. Gritty. The kind of script that would terrify any rising star afraid of ruining their image. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I accepted. And the press release didn't say, "sponsored actress," or "former scandal magnate." It said, "Ivy Morgan to star in Lighthouse. Her first leading role since Speaking Out." And under that, a quote from the director. She was always the obvious choice. The industry just hadn't caught up yet. That night Asher and I sat on the couch in silence, eating takeout from my favorite dumpling shop. He wore glasses and an oversized hoodie that made him look slightly less like the CEO of an empire and more like the man I used to share ramen with after 12-hour shoots. I showed him the headline. He smiled. "You're not the canary anymore," he said. "No. You're the whole damn storm." A few weeks later we held a private engagement dinner. Only close friends. No press. Just Harper, Jade, Isla, Delilah, Leo Chan, awkward, and a few of Asher's surprisingly kind board members. Delilah gave a toast. I thought she was just a pretty girl with a scandal, she said. Now I know she's the blueprint. Laughter followed. Then Jade stood. Ivy saved me before she even realized she could save herself. I cried again. But this time they were tears of joy. At the end of the evening, Asher pulled me aside. Do you remember what you told me the day we met? I frowned. I said a lot of things. Mostly about hating champagne. You told me you'd never be someone's pet. I smirked. Still true. He leaned in. You're not mine, Ivy. He kissed my temple. You're everything. Someone had told me years ago, back when I was doing toothpaste commercials and dodging sleazy producers, that I'd one day be married to Asher Reed, eating cake barefoot on a private beach and laughing so hard I'd snort sparkling wine through my nose. I would have laughed them right into the sun. But here I was. Exactly that girl. Wife of a billionaire. Queen of a comeback. And possibly the first person in the history of weddings to fall into a rose bush mid-vow. Yes. That happened. It started perfectly, of course. We rented out a secluded cove in Port Odessa. No paparazzi. No influencers. Just 30 people we actually liked and 0 hashtags. I wore a soft satin slip dress that cost less than my earrings. My curls were loose and free. And my shoes. Nowhere to be found. I refused to walk down any aisle in heels. My toes deserved joy too. Harper officiated. She wore a fuchsia jumpsuit and dramatic eyeliner and swore at least twice during the ceremony. Jade was my maid of honor, armed with tissues and enough teasing to make me want to trip her during the procession. Asher's best man was Nolan Chon, who gave a toast so dryly sarcastic the entire table howled. And Asher? Asher looked at me like the world had finally gone right side up. He wore a dark navy suit, no tie, sleeves rolled up, and a crooked grin that spelled trouble from 2 continents away. You look like you walked out of a cologne ad, I whispered as I joined him at the altar. You look like my most expensive mistake, he replied, eyes gleaming. Excuse me. Babe, I'm marrying you. You're going to bankrupt me in moisturizer alone. I laughed so hard I almost choked on my own vows. When Harper got to the speak now or forever hold your peace part, Jade raised her hand. Objection, she said solemnly. The bride once wore socks with sandals in public. Gasps. Findle. She also ate sushi with a spoon, Nolan added, deadpan. Asher turned to me horrified. A spoon, Ivy? This is betrayal. Oh, shut up, I hissed, grinning. You still think kombucha is wine. The crowd roared. We hadn't even said I do, and we were already being roasted alive. Finally we got through the vows. Mostly. Asher tried to recite a poem and ended up forgetting half of it, so he just improvised. You are the espresso to my chaos, the Wi-Fi to my meetings, the only one I'd let steal the last fry. And the reason I'm voluntarily doing this in front of other people. Harper groaned. Is this a vow or a LinkedIn post? I'm trying, he yelled back, laughing. I went next. I promise to love you even when you leave beard trimmings in the sink. He gasped. That was one time. Every time. And I promise, I added more softly now, to never forget what we survived. And to laugh with you, louder than the world ever tried to silence us. A beat of silence. Then applause. And tears. And a sneeze from Harper because apparently she's allergic to emotions. We kissed under twinkling string lights strung between 2 palm trees. Then immediately tripped on a loose seashell and landed on the sand in a heap. Asher rolled over and held me like we were alone. You do know, he murmured, brushing hair from my face. You married a man who once ordered a $2,000 bottle of wine thinking it was the house red. I also married a man who sends back lattes if the foam isn't symmetrical, I replied sweetly. You deserve symmetrical foam. And yet I put up with you. That's love, baby, he said, grinning wide. The dinner reception was even better. Long wooden tables on the beach. Pillows instead of chairs. Live jazz band playing movie scores at half speed so Harper could hum along out of tune. Jade stood to give her toast and immediately pulled out a scroll. I have prepared a 12-minute thesis on Ivy's poor decision-making over the years. No. I yelled. Too late, she shouted. Exhibit A. That time you dated the guy who wore socks with toe separators. The room screamed. Ivy, Asher whispered, fake scandal in his eyes. Was this before or after me? Before. Thank God. I would have ghosted you on sight. Later, Delilah and Leo danced together in the shadows. No declarations. No drama. Just soft steps under moonlight. And I couldn't help smiling. Even the complicated people were finding their soft endings. Maybe love did come around for everyone. Eventually, when the cake arrived, it was wrong. Asher had specifically requested chocolate hazelnut luxury. We got lemon meringue. He stared at it like it was an insult to his lineage. "You think this is funny?" he asked. I tried not to laugh. "It's very on brand for us." "You mean accidental chaos with buttercream?" "Exactly." He fed me the first bite, then missed my mouth and shoved frosting up my nose. "You are not sleeping in my bed tonight." He smirked. "Then I guess we'll have to christen the hammock." Scandal. Married scandal. We both cracked up. Around midnight, the guests left in clusters of laughter and stolen centerpiece shells. Jade kidnapped Nolan's shoes. Harper danced barefoot in the surf. And Delilah kissed Leo's cheek before walking away in the opposite direction. Drama minimal. Satisfaction maximum. Asher and I stayed behind. Just the two of us. Sitting on a beach blanket watching the stars. I leaned against him, my hand on his heart. "Tell me something," I whispered. "Anything. Did you ever think we'd get here?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, "No. But I hoped." I looked up at him. He looked down at me. And somewhere between laughter and the lemon cake still stuck in my hair, I realized something. I wasn't just a girl who'd survived scandal. Or a woman who got the ring. I was Ivy freaking Morgan. And I was finally, happy. "You know what the internet's going to call this wedding?" I murmured. "What?" "Canary marries billionaire in secret seaside ceremony." He made a face. "Ugh. So boring." "Got a better one?" He thought for a second, then grinned. "Former canary marries the man she taught to dance." I laughed. "That's actually perfect." "You're welcome. I'm a writer now." "No, you're mine," I said, pulling him into another kiss. And somewhere in the background the waves clapped their approval. We didn't fly to Paris for a honeymoon. We stayed. On that little beach. For 3 days. Eating pancakes. Swimming at midnight. Falling asleep in a hammock too small for 2 adults and a bottle of stolen champagne. And for once, nobody chased us. Nobody called. Nobody asked us to explain how we got here. We just were. Love didn't save me. I did that. But love. Love made the saving sweet. The end.